All right, perfect. Hello, everyone. This is Melody Bell from Financial Beginnings, founder and CEO, and so excited to have the second of our web series. This is a busy time of year. This is Financial Literacy Month, and spring of last year, Financial Beginnings was in over 500 classrooms. These kids still need this information, and so this is our way to adapting to the new norm that we're all experiencing, and providing kind of snippets of some of our curriculum. But besides just you hearing from me on what that is, I'm able to have the opportunity to invite in experts from within the industry, tap into our partners' expertise, and have these conversations. And so with that, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. This gives us an opportunity to have another format to deliver our mission to you. And please share it with their audiences, any educators that you know, any young folks. This is an excerpt from Financial Beginnings SAFE program, which is targeted for college students. But really, this is valuable information for all of us. And so with that, I want to introduce my guest today from Intuit, Jared Davidove. Thank you.
Thanks, Melody. Thanks for having me on. Happy to be here and happy to talk to everybody who is going to be listening. As Melody mentioned, this is actually not just for college students, especially taxes are important for everybody. But some of the stuff that we'll go through, like your W-4, changes for everyone, not just college students. So a lot of what we'll actually go through applies to everyone. So share broadly.
And Jared, obviously I'm very familiar with Intuit, and many people are, but I think sometimes people are more familiar with what the products of Intuit. So can you take just a brief moment to talk about those?
Of course. So it's actually kind of interesting. So most of the time when I say I work for Intuit, people automatically jump to the conclusions that I'm an accountant, and if I'm not an accountant, that I'm an engineer. And I actually do neither. So I lead Intuit's financial readiness program. And what that really means is we help empower students to make smart money decisions. So I am not an accountant, but really what we do is, like Melody and I, what we're trying to do is bring personal finance and financial literacy to the classroom. But Intuit, for those of you who aren't familiar with Intuit, you probably are familiar with TurboTax. TurboTax is one of our products, as well as we have QuickBooks and Mint. QuickBooks is an accounting software. And then Mint is a personal finance app to kind of help bring all of your personal finances into whether you use it as an app or the website mint.com.
Perfect. And as I said, this is just one excerpt from our income and taxes program from SAFE. And earlier last week, I went over the career more income portion of that. So I definitely encourage you all to check back with the YouTube and see that. So with that, you've probably heard the saying, right? There's two things in life to be sure of, right? What is it?
There are death and taxes.
Yes.
Even in this environment, Uncle Sam, there will always be taxes.
And so, with that, like you said, we're going to go over kind of some of the basics of taxes and delve a little bit deeper more into the income tax, since, this is being launched on April 15th, the lovely tax day that we all love. And so let's talk a little bit more of that. But, besides income taxes, it really is amazing kind of where taxes, they get us from all over, right? So there's obviously income taxes, which we see and we deal with every April 15th to be able to settle up. And we'll talk more about those. But then there's, sales taxes in going to the store and purchasing that. I am fortunate that I am in Oregon, a few states that
I don't have the same luxury as you do. I'm in California and I definitely have taxes.
And, but it definitely slices and dices other ways, right? And when you start to look too on, real estate taxes that are on our assets. And so, or if I own stock and I'm receiving dividends, or if I sell that stock, then I'm going to have taxes on that. As well as, some of those more fun things that they, look to get taxes on. And maybe it's just to discourage us, from, smoking or buying taxes. But then also when we're traveling, there's those extra taxes that we're going to be seeing on our hotel bill when we're traveling, when we get to months and months from now.
I was say right now, I'm hoping people aren't traveling. And if you are, means you're stuck somewhere because you've been there for the last 3 weeks.
Right. So when we're talking about income taxes, I like to kind of just like take the simplified process and what that process looks like. So
Mhm.
part of it is when we get a job, our HR department is going to tell us to fill out this W-4. And it's changed recently. Have you changed your W-4 recently
It,
and seen that?
so it has changed, which is why this is such a great time to do a webinar like this. Because so what really has happened is they took away the withholding allowances from your W-4. So me personally, I have not changed mine. And the reason for that is because if you don't change them, my understanding is that it defaults to the same amount based on your employer as what it previously was.
Mhm.
So I would definitely double check and make sure that that's going to be the case. If you go to the IRS website, I think it's irs.gov, that sounds probably about right.
Mhm.
You can read all about the new W-4. But really what they went ahead and did was they took away the withholding system and essentially the allowances because they want taxes and the W-4 specifically to be more have more transparency. Sorry, that's the word I'm looking for. And so what does that really mean? It determines how much money your employer takes out of your paycheck. So how it used to be, if you have higher allowances, basically they take more money out, and then what happens is at the end of the year, you either end up owing money or you get money back in your return. So that's kind of why the W-4 is actually extremely important, not just for us, but for a new college student as well.
For sure. And it's like, for me, I really try to shoot for that zero. Like I want to break even when I'm filing my taxes at the end of the year. It's been years
Exactly.
since I've been able to do that. And actually one of the challenges with that is, when you were going through the traditional W-4, it's asking you, if you're married, if you have children, and it kind of adds up all these allowances like you talked about, and that
Mm-hmm.
gives them an estimate on how much they should be taking out of my paycheck. Now,
Yep.
but me, I'm also a professor at Portland State. So I get a small salary from that's added onto my salary. So Portland
Mm-hmm.
State looks at me and they say, you don't make very much money. We're not going to take very much taxes out. They don't know that I also work for Financial Beginnings. And so when you add that income on top, so that's kind of one of
Yeah.
the cool aspects about the new W-4 is it
Mm-hmm.
asks you, do you have multiple income streams? And then it's
Yeah.
to compile that to hopefully provide a better estimate on how much we need to have taken out of our paycheck every month.
Yeah. And actually, one good thing that you brought up that I always love to talk about is I would say the majority of individuals think it's actually really good to get a tax return. That's not true. And the reason why is because what it means is you gave the government essentially throughout the whole year an interest-free loan
Right.
that you get at one time a year, which for some who are just not good at saving, like that does exist, then it works for you because it's a forced savings account almost, as long as you don't blow it as soon as you get your money. But like you mentioned, you really want to shoot for getting $0 or owing as little as you possibly can because it means you made the most out of your paycheck. So maybe you can put that into a savings account and then it grows instead of just waiting for that one time a year that you get it.
Exactly. And now, we're all at home. We maybe have some more time. Unfortunately, we may have, changes in our own circumstances due to the COVID-19. This is probably a good opportunity for us to check out the new W-4 and see if we should be making some changes on ours.
Yes, definitely.
So as we said, the W-4 is then going to determine what is coming out of our pay stub and how much they're going to be withholding for estimating our taxes. And then at the end of the year, our employer is going to send us a W-2, which the W-2 is just going to provide that summary of what the whole year was that we received. And so it may be that we're getting multiple W-2s. We may also actually be getting 1099s. I mean, this is now the era of the side hustle, right? If I'm a contractor driving Uber or any of that, yeah, I may be getting 1099s. So one thing to also, important to understand is if you are a contractor in those, you need to establish that savings plan outside of it because they're not going to be taking that money out for us, right?
Yeah, correct. That's actually a big misconception that I hear a lot all the time. And it's actually happened to several of my friends where when they first got out of college and graduated, they got 1099 jobs. They didn't realize that there was a difference between a 1099 and a W-2, never saved. And then they went to go do their taxes and realized, oh, shoot, I owe thousands of dollars. I thought that I wasn't going to have to cover this. So that's actually, it's extremely important to understand, especially now. I didn't check the statistics today, but I know the last 2 weeks, over 10 million Americans unfortunately lost their job. So if you get a new job, make sure that as you get brought on, that the difference between a W-2 and that 1099.
Yeah, important to understand. And then we take that information and we're going to settle it up. Now, going back to the pay stub, I thought it's always kind of nice to look and see that difference. And so it's, if I'm making, $15 an hour and I, I think it's going to add up, and hey, my pay stub is going to be, here it's gross of $1,300. Where's my $1,300? And it's
Yeah.
also, I mean, my dad loves telling the story about my first paycheck coming from Dairy Queen and who's FICA and what are they doing, right? And so, understanding that that's the gross amount, right? That's that's that total amount. And but we've got all these taxes that we're going to be withholding with that. So there's the federal tax. There's possibly a state income tax if you live in a state with that. There's Medicare. There's an opportunity for me to kind of force savings if I'm able to participate in a 401k plan with my employer, all of that. And so all of that is then going to end up to what that lower net amount is that I get paid.
Correct. Yeah. And it's extremely, for me, I would say it's extremely important to understand where that money is going. Because when you go to create a budget, you don't want to take into account and think, oh, I'm getting $1,300 every month, or if you, if this is bi-weekly or whatever it was, you're not actually getting $2,600 based on the net pay. You're really getting like $2,200 or $2,300.
And that's, something that comes up with my students a lot too. And I don't know if you have any opinions on that. So when you're budgeting, do you include taxes in your budget, or do you just go to the net pay and just like, I'm gonna go?
I just use net pay. And the reason for that is because, I think it's important, but so I personally use like an app to go through my budgeting. And so when I do that, I put my net pay in instead of the total, because what happens is every time I swipe, like whether it's my card or I use an account, the transactions automatically go in. And quite frankly, I'm too lazy to put taxes in. So I just use my net pay, and that's my budget, because it kind of makes me sad a little bit to see how much money I have to pay to taxes. That's not what I get. But I know it's understandable and you have to do it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And then the W-2, like we talked about, at the end of the year, our employer is going to send us a W-2, and it's going to just provide a summary of the sense of here's the total amount that I paid in taxes and how much I made. One of the things that's interesting to always kind of look at is the difference between the box 1 and box 3, where it's talking about like, here's how much I made. And then it's talking about, oh, well, here's Social Security wages. So do you want to talk about a little bit, like what do you mean that's different?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and something that we see pretty often. And the reason why you'll notice different wages depending on whether it's box 3, box 4. So the reason for that is because what happens when, I think probably one of the best examples of this is thinking about your retirement and with like a 401k. So your income for the entire year, according to what this looks like, is $30,000. So I had to squeeze in there. But anytime that you essentially contribute to your 401k, or donations is another example, then what it does is it decreases your taxable income. So when you think about tax brackets and the different tax brackets based on how much you earn, when you contribute to your 401k, or you make donations or your student loans, what's happening is you're actually, if there's a lot, then you can actually reduce the tax bracket that you're part of.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it's an opportunity for us to be able to save free of taxes for now, and to be able to lower that taxable income, as you mentioned. So when we're filing our taxes, essentially, when we fill out that W-4 and they're taking taxes out of our paycheck, it's really just an estimate of what we think. And so when we're filing taxes at the end of the year, it's our time to settle up, right? And so we're taking the taxes that we owe. So you're going through, and we'll walk a little bit more through kind of how that's determined. But here's how much taxes that I owe. Here's what I withheld on my paycheck, and then magically I end up at zero. Well, probably not, right? It's either going to then trigger that I get a refund because I've withheld too much or more than I needed, or I'm going to have to be settling up and paying. And in my case, it seems like I'm always just paying. I don't know about you.
Yeah, so I will say I have never gotten to that like perfect $0. I mean, again, I don't want to owe money and I don't want to receive money.
Mm.
So I'm like in a unique case because I work for Intuit, but I also own a small business. So it depends on whether, if it was a couple years ago when I first started or now, but I think the closest I've ever gotten was I owed like a couple $100, and I was like ecstatic. I was like, this is amazing. I've never gotten that close before. Um, so it's one thing to actually, while I'm looking at the date here, just to note, like April 15th, actually this year is not the tax date. It's July 15th. Yeah,
Nice.
so it was pushed. You actually get an extra 90 days, um, which I wouldn't actually recommend waiting until July 15th because especially now the average American gets, I think it's a little over $3,000 in a refund. So if you know that you're getting a refund, do your taxes, get the money, and especially like with what's happening right now, more cash in your pocket, especially with the stimulus package that's coming out, where you get the check for the coronavirus and everything else. I mean, it's a good time to start, like whether it's learning about savings or if you happen to unfortunately you're part of like the restaurant industry and you were laid off, then maybe this will help keep you afloat for a little bit longer. There's just so many like positive reasons as to why you should file your taxes now instead of waiting. And whether you do it, which I know we'll talk about this a little bit later, but there are so many free resources if you make under, I think the number is $69,000 a year, it might be somewhere around there, plus or minus a couple thousand. You can file your taxes for free. I mean, if you go to like the Free File Alliance or just Google free taxes, I mean, there's 1,000 different ways. I shouldn't say 1,000. There's a handful of different ways to do your taxes for free and get your refund now. The one thing that I think about, and I don't know how this is impacting, is I know when you do your taxes closer to the beginning of the year, it usually takes anywhere between 2 and 3 weeks to get your return if you have direct deposit. I don't know if the stimulus packages plus the SBA loans that are going out, I don't know if that's affecting how quickly you'll get your return, but obviously the sooner you file it, the quicker you get your return.
Right. Yeah. And, and it's important to understand, on a normal due date or even with this situation. So they are, from April 15th, they are extending both your filing and paying. Now, there is sometimes the misnomer that when taxes are due on April 15th, yes, you can file an extension, but you still have the payment that's due. And so you have to, and so you have to then estimate essentially what your taxes are going to be due and still be writing that check and then, settle it up when you do the taxes down the road. So that is one thing I think sometimes, I've heard kind of that falsehood that, oh, I can postpone that payment for 6 months, but you still want the money.
Yeah. Again, you will always have to pay. Uncle Sam will always collect.
So it gets a little bit more into the intricacies of how we settle up the taxes. And so it's more than just looking at how much I made and here's the tax amount. There is the opportunity. One is, looking at deductions that we can be actually able to decrease that income amount that we're taxed on. And so, college students are able to have deductions relating to expenses they have with tuition. Once you purchase a house, mortgage interest is another deduction. Man, my children, they let me, but the one benefit I get, right, is I get to deduct them. And so those deductions are actually going to decrease the amount that I'm taxed on.
Correct. Yep.
Preferred, in my mind, I don't know if you agree, are credits. Because like with credits, that is dollar for dollar against my tax bill, right? And so when it comes to a tax credit, if they say that they are giving me a $300 tax credit, that is $300 in my pocket. That is directly affecting the tax thing.
Yep.
And
so
then go ahead.
Go for it. I was going to say, and the one thing that when you get all these things, because this question actually comes up a lot as well, how do I use this information, or how do I mark that in whatever tool you happen to use? Like for education, I think you get a 1098T. I think that's the correct form. For if you go to Goodwill and you donate, you get receipts that you can put in. One actually that's that we all have to do is car registration fees. But the problem is we don't keep the receipt, most of us. I mean, I know I definitely don't every year. But this is all sort of the documentation that you need to prepare when you are filing.
Yeah, and we'll talk in a minute too about that system, because I tell you now I've got it now. I'm really excited. It took many years, so maybe I'll give some tips on that. Plans are another opportunity, and so we talked like a 401k plan, to where it's allowing me an opportunity to not be paying taxes on it now. When it comes to like a 401k, I am going to be paying that later on when I start withdrawing from it. Other plans that relate to education and college are like a 529, a college savings plan. That may be able to, like here in Oregon, it's really cool, is that we're able to receive tax credits for putting money into a college savings plan. And then all that money that grows in there is also tax-free, both federally and state. So that's another great opportunity for plans to be able to avoid paying more taxes than we have to.
Yep. And so not only are you benefiting yourself during tax time, but your students, when they're ready to go off to school, it's just extra savings and money for them that hopefully they don't have to take. I mean, in the perfect world, right? We don't have to take out student loans.
Yes, exactly. And so going a little bit more into tax credits, again, it's tax credits are really great, even beyond what I said, that it's dollar for dollar, but it's even amount is like, if you think, hey, I'm a student, or I don't have any taxes. I had a low enough income that I didn't have taxes. You can actually, with tax credits, get paid more, and so be making more money back with those credits, even if it's not, you don't have the taxable amount to have that deducted from, which is amazing.
Yep. It's definitely a great resource.
And, different aspects with tax credits are, there's child credits, education credits. If you are adopted an individual, the earned income tax credits. I think that's one thing that we need to put that word out more and more, that there's, money that's being left on the table. You just need to spend that bit of time filing your taxes.
And it's just that little bit of research too. I mean, it's not too much research. It's really just like, if you were to Google top 10 things to know, like when filing taxes, or I know something that I use personally a lot is there's something called like the TurboTax blog, and it's checklists of, okay, you can kind of figure out what person you are. I have children, I have a mortgage, and they list all the forms that you should get. And so like, a big one that always comes up is like the earned income credit. And so there's checklists out there that you can find. You could just Google tax form checklists. And I know that's something that I use every year to help.
It's a great resource. And again, going back to tracking all of this, because it seems a little daunting sometimes, and just like, I've got to hang on to these goodwill receipts, and I've got to put a value to all of this. And so the way that we can, think about, one is, well, what do we need to keep track of? You talked about some of those. And two is figuring out, in the sense of our budgeting and our spending system, or what is our system to be able to make it easier when we do our taxes. And like I said, this took me years. So I'll share a couple of my tips, but then, I am older, so I imagine, and you're more electronically inclined, so I imagine you'll have some really great tips of that too. But for me, I still have just like a folder that anytime, I get the goodwill or something that's tax deductible, I throw it into that folder. And it has made it a lot easier for me at the end of the year. I just kind of make my piles on, here's the deductions, and here's my, W-2s and all of that, to then start to, be able to walk through doing my taxes. How about you? Like, I'm sure you probably have it much more sophisticated.
So I'm actually very similar to you. I'm a slightly OCD, and I actually I drive my wife a little crazy when I do this. But like, if there is a receipt, whatever it happens to be, so I keep it similar to you, but I scan it, and then I have like a digital copy. Because what I end up doing is I obviously I don't do pen and paper taxes. I have never done that in my life, and I will never do that in my life. There's just so many resources, online to help you. So I'm very similar to you. I just essentially have digital folders on my computer. So I do the same thing, and quite honestly, you try it once or twice, you're like, man, this is like really kind of a heavy lift. But I will say, when it comes, January, February, April, if you're pushing it, you really save yourself a lot of headaches and a lot of time. So if you just do 10 minutes every time you get, whether maybe it's a donation receipt or something that's deductible, I'm telling you, the 5 hours or that daunting task of when tax time comes around, you will be like, oh my God, this is like a lifesaver.
Exactly. Well, and I know we'll probably, since we're going to be hanging out at home for a while, I think we'll probably be doing another webinar on Mint. But, you know, I think that's another really great resource too, and to think about in some of the other electronic softwares now, it's kind of like your email filing. I mean, like,
Yeah.
you can just like click a button.
Yeah, so I use Mint for budgeting. Again, whether it's through your phone or you can use it through a computer. But really what it does is it captures essentially your transactions. And so when you think about the end of the year, you have the ability to kind of, whether you want to download all those transactions or what you're doing is you're actually categorizing them. So you can categorize things as like, you know, part of taxes or however you want to do it. I started going that route and actually was trying it. But it wasn't clean enough for me. So I personally wanted to actually create the folders on my computer to do it.
Right.
But you can't, there is so much other software, like, yeah, Mint is a great example where you can do it. But I didn't want to mingle my personal life and keep taxes as part of that. I really wanted them separate, and I didn't want to like have to live with both, just because I'm probably one of the weird people who, like, the majority will, you know, once they wake up, like go on social media or check their phones for whatever. Mine is basically mail, and then let me check and see my Mint account and figure out where my budget's going. And I know that's not the norm. I'm a little
Yeah.
So that's why I kind of keep those separate.
You're preaching to the choir. It's with me. So, and you brushed a little bit on this too, but there's so much help available, and a lot of times free help available to prepare your taxes. And you know I teach at Portland State, and I had students this term, you know, wanting to walk through, and I know you're gonna be coming to hang out with my Portland State students to walk through a TurboTax, but it's a little nerve-wracking, you know, and it's especially if it's their first time, and what are they going to come out? You hear the term like audit, and that sounds scary, and so understanding that, yeah, there's some really great resources, and a lot of them, you know, I mean, when you were talking about $69,000 income threshold, I mean, you've got a while before you really have to worry about possibly paying for your taxes.
And so you can find, I mean, again, you can Google the Free File program. And so I'm pretty confident the Free File program is its own website. There's something called the Free File Alliance, which is really to talk about the Free File program as well as the VITA programs, which help you file your taxes. So you can go to, depending on where you live, maybe it's the local library or the local community center. I know we do this personally. We will go as part of VITAs, and we will help individuals file their taxes. So again, that's just whether it's part of the Free File, now I'm mixing all the terms up, the Free File Alliance. There's just so many different ways in which, yes, if you make under that threshold, which I'm the confident level of 69,000 sounds about right.
Yeah, and it's, you know, you can walk yourself through it, like you're talking about with TurboTax, or if you're like, no, I really want to work through this. There's lots of work, like you can go and you can hand that file that I have to that person, and they will help to get your taxes filed. So
exactly.
Definitely feel free to look at those different resources and be able to tap into them. I mean, free is a good price.
Free is always the best.
Well, we're at our time with this, Jared. I really appreciate your on the fly with Melody's you know, harebrained idea to say, hey, let's hop on and
of course
see about taxes. And so I really appreciate it. But, you know, before we leave, is there any kind of additional words of wisdom or resources that you want to share?
Yeah, so I will say just because the environment we're living in, and we've grown up our whole lives with the anxiety about tax time. Like, I mean, we all live it. We grew up with our parents, you know, saying, oh, it's April, why do I have to do taxes? Like, I don't want to do them. It's such a pain. I still hear all the time, people are delaying to do their taxes. Don't delay, because especially if you're getting a refund, you want that refund as fast as you can to help you, whether it's, again, for rent, or it's for your mortgage, or it's for your, you know, for food on the table. again, the faster you get that, obviously, the better in your pocket than waiting, until July to get that. That would probably be the big like misconception that I keep hearing is, oh, I get an extra 90 days. Great. I'm just going to wait 90 days.
The procrastinator's dream.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much again, Jared. I'm really excited. Next week, we're going to be talking with Rod Griffin, who you know from Experian.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
we're going to be talking about credit, and really excited with that. Again, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, check out these videos, share them amongst your audience, and thank you so much.
Thanks, Melody.
Done.